Power is one of the most fundamental forces shaping human history, relationships, and society. It is often misunderstood, feared, or seen as inherently corrupt. Yet power is neutral. It is a tool. Like fire, it can destroy or illuminate. The psychology of power reveals that those who understand influence and control are not simply manipulative. They are strategic, aware of human nature, and capable of navigating complex social dynamics. In this exploration, we will uncover the truths about power that most people avoid, strategies for influence that have stood the test of time, and psychological principles that govern every human interaction. By the end, you will see power not as an external force, but as something you can consciously cultivate and wield with precision. Power begins with perception. Humans are wired to respond to confidence, authority, and status cues, often without realizing it. From a biological standpoint, dominance hierarchies are ingrained in us, inherited from our evolutionary past. In primitive societies, strength, cunning, and leadership determined survival, and those instincts persist today in workplaces, politics, and relationships. Understanding this allows you to operate with clarity. Influence is not simply about persuasion. It is about positioning yourself as someone others naturally follow. This is why leaders cultivate presence, charisma, and decisiveness. They know that most people are drawn to certainty because it provides a sense of security. If you wish to master influence, you must learn to project confidence, even in uncertainty. This psychological principle, known as the authority effect, drives much of our decision-making. People defer to perceived experts because their brains equate confidence with competence. Another critical component of power is emotional intelligence. Many think manipulation relies solely on deception, but true influence is built on understanding emotions, yours and others. Emotional intelligence allows you to navigate conflicts, build alliances, and predict behavior. Power players are not always the loudest in the room. Often, they are the quiet observers, reading subtle cues, waiting for the right moment to act. They understand that people are motivated not just by logic but by emotion. This is why framing is a powerful psychological tool. If you can frame an idea in a way that aligns with someone's values or fears, you gain influence without resistance. Consider how political leaders and advertisers operate. They do not simply present facts, they craft narratives that resonate deeply with emotions. History offers countless examples of individuals who mastered these principles. Machiavelli, often misunderstood as advocating ruthless behavior, actually taught the importance of adaptability and perception. He argued that a leader must appear virtuous while retaining the flexibility to act pragmatically when needed. Similarly, Sun Tzu emphasized psychological warfare, understanding that battles are often won before they begin, through preparation and perception. These lessons remain relevant today. Whether in business negotiations or social interactions, the person who anticipates moves, reads others' intentions, and controls the narrative holds power. Influence is rarely about brute force. It is about subtlety, timing, and understanding what drives people at their core. One of the most misunderstood aspects of power is that it is not always visible. Some of the most powerful people in history worked behind the scenes, pulling strings without recognition. This is the essence of soft power, shaping outcomes without direct confrontation. For example, advisors, strategists, and diplomats often have immense influence despite lacking formal authority. Soft power relies heavily on relationships, trust, and information control. Knowledge is power, but more importantly, controlling how information flows gives you leverage. When you decide what others see, hear, and believe, you shape their reality. This is why secrecy and discretion are hallmarks of powerful individuals. They reveal only what benefits them, always maintaining a layer of mystery. Mystery creates intrigue, and intrigue leads others to overestimate your influence. Confidence and mystery are amplified by scarcity. Psychologists have long documented that humans value what seems rare or unattainable. Scarcity triggers desire because the brain equates rarity with value. Power, therefore, is not always about constant visibility. Sometimes it is about strategic withdrawal. When you make yourself less available, your time and attention become more valuable. This principle applies to leadership, dating, business, and even friendships. Those who are always accessible lose perceived status, while those who maintain boundaries command respect. Influence is not about overwhelming others, but about positioning yourself as someone whose approval and presence carry weight. Another layer of psychological power is manipulation, not in the malicious sense, but in the technical sense of shaping environments and outcomes. The word manipulation often carries negative connotations, yet all social interaction involves subtle forms of manipulation. Parents manipulate children by setting boundaries. Teachers manipulate attention through structure. Leaders manipulate group dynamics to achieve objectives. The ethical question lies in intent. When power is used ethically, it uplifts others, creates stability, and achieves necessary outcomes. However, when power is abused, it leads to oppression. Understanding this duality is crucial. The tools themselves are neutral. Morality depends on the wielder. In relationships, power dynamics play a subtle yet profound role. Every partnership, whether romantic, familial, or professional, has a balance of power, often shifting over time. Awareness of these dynamics prevents exploitation. People who ignore power imbalances often become victims of manipulation because they fail to recognize subtle patterns. For example, gaslighting, a psychological manipulation technique, thrives on ignorance. By eroding someone's confidence in their own perception, manipulators gain control. The antidote is self-awareness and education. Knowledge of psychological tactics makes you less susceptible to them, turning power into a protective shield rather than a weapon against you. Self-mastery is the foundation of influence. You cannot effectively control others if you cannot control yourself. Emotional regulation, self-discipline, and resilience are traits that all powerful individuals share. This is why leaders like Marcus Aurelius emphasized stoicism, mastering your reactions, detaching from external chaos, and focusing on what is within your control. Psychological strength is not loud. It is calm, steady, and deliberate. When you project inner stability, others instinctively look to you for guidance. In a chaotic world, stability is a rare commodity, and those who possess it naturally rise in influence. Another pillar of psychological power is persuasion. Persuasion is not about force but about alignment. It is the art of guiding someone to a conclusion without them realizing they were guided. This requires empathy, strategic communication, and storytelling. Stories are the oldest form of influence because they bypass logical resistance and engage emotions. Leaders who tell compelling stories shape culture, inspire loyalty, and influence entire generations. Consider how myths, religions, and political ideologies endure. They are not just systems of belief, but narratives that resonate deeply with human nature. Control of attention is perhaps the most underestimated form of power in the modern age. In today's digital world, attention is currency. Social media platforms, advertisers, and corporations compete for it relentlessly. If you control attention, you control behavior. This is why mastering your own attention is equally important. Those who cannot control their focus become pawns in someone else's game. Power begins with awareness, seeing through distractions, questioning narratives, and choosing where your energy flows. Once you master your attention, influencing others becomes far easier because you understand the mechanics of focus and persuasion. The road to power is not without resistance. People fear those who understand influence because knowledge disrupts the status quo. If you seek power ethically, you will face opposition. However, this is not a sign of failure but of progress. Resistance is proof that you are making an impact. Leaders, thinkers, and innovators throughout history faced criticism because they challenged norms. True power requires courage, the courage to act strategically, to speak when necessary, and to remain silent when it serves your purpose. The ability to choose your battles is a sign of wisdom. Not every confrontation is worth your energy. Strategic retreat is often more powerful than a direct clash. Mastering influence also requires understanding human desires. At the core of every action is a set of fundamental needs: security, recognition, love, autonomy, and meaning. If you can fulfill these needs for others, you gain influence effortlessly. This is why charismatic leaders inspire loyalty. They create environments where people feel valued and understood. Influence is not just about manipulation but about connection. The strongest power comes from being deeply attuned to others' motivations. This requires active listening, empathy, and observation. The more you understand people, the more predictable they become, and predictability gives you control. Ultimately, the psychology of power is about self-awareness, discipline, and strategy. It is not about dominance for its own sake, but about creating opportunities, protecting yourself, and shaping your destiny. Power is not inherently evil. It is a force that reflects character. If you cultivate power with integrity, you can become a source of stability, inspiration, and progress. Influence is not about control over others, but about control over yourself and your environment. The choice is yours. To remain unaware of the forces shaping your life, or to master them and use them wisely. Those who fear power are often ruled by it. Those who study it gain freedom. By understanding psychology, influence, and control, you place yourself among the few who navigate life consciously rather than blindly. The world has always belonged to those who understand these truths. Now it is your turn.